We are counting down the 20 most disrespectful moments in Ryder Cup history, where fierce rivalry boiled over into pure hostility. From offhand comments that set crowds ablaze to jaw-dropping fan meltdowns, these incidents showcase the fine line between competitive passion and outright abuse. You will see everything from wild player outbursts and caddie confrontations to leadership failures and unforgettable fan behavior, each one pushing the boundaries of sportsmanship just a little further. But which moment redefined what is acceptable at golf's biggest team event? Let's begin at number 20, with the words that sparked a storm. Number 20 starts with a single phrase that echoed far beyond the press tent. Before the first tee shot at Bethpage, Collin Morikawa predicted the week would bring absolute chaos, a nod to New York's famously raucous crowd. Critics seized on those words as the spark that set the tone, especially as heckling toward Rory McIlroy spiraled through the weekend. Morikawa later clarified he wanted energy, not abuse, but the damage was done. The Ryder Cup's code expects passion, not permission for mayhem. In a tournament where language shapes the crowd, one offhand comment can open the door to everything that follows. Number 19 brings the spotlight to the first tee, where comedian Heather McMahon was hired to energize the crowd as the official MC. Instead, she became the story herself, caught on video joining a profane chant directed at Rory McIlroy. The footage spread rapidly, raising sharp questions about the PGA's vetting process and the message sent when a paid staff member legitimizes abuse from the stage. McMahon resigned before Sunday's singles and issued a public apology, but the damage was clear. When those with microphones fuel the hostility, the line between hype and harassment all but disappears. Number 18 lands in the late afternoon at Bethpage, where a plastic cup sailed from the crowd and struck Erica Stoll, Rory McIlroy's wife, just above the brim of her hat. For a moment, the line between rowdy fandom and personal endangerment vanished. Stoll, visibly shaken, became the face of a Ryder Cup where family safety was no longer guaranteed. The offender was detained and removed, but the message from McIlroy was unmistakable. Family is strictly off limits. No golf rule covers this kind of breach, only ejection and a public apology from PGA officials who suddenly faced a crisis that went far beyond the ropes. Number 17 finds Rory McIlroy at a breaking point on the tee box at Bethpage. After repeated step-offs and a barrage of heckling from the gallery, McIlroy turned and fired back, his voice cutting through the noise with a sharp, explicit command. "Shut the f up!" The moment was captured live, time-stamped on the broadcast, and echoed in martial radio logs as officials scrambled to restore order. Marshals moved quickly, ejecting the offending spectator, but the damage was done. This single outburst laid bare the psychological toll of relentless abuse, revealing just how thin the line had become between competitive energy and outright hostility. Number 16 drops us into the middle of Saturday's tension at Bethpage, where Ted Scott, caddie for Scottie Scheffler, clashed with European vice-captain Francesco Molinari. What started as a heated exchange over green etiquette turned physical, with Scott reacting to a shoulder tap from Molinari with a shove. The moment was captured on broadcast, prompting swift intervention from nearby staff. Hours later, Scott posted a public apology video, standing arm in arm with Molinari and stressing their mutual respect. No formal warning was issued, but the incident served as a sharp reminder. Even team staff are expected to uphold Ryder Cup decorum, and discipline falls squarely under the committee's watch. Number 15. Bethpage reached a breaking point as marshals and police began clearing out entire sections of the crowd. By early Saturday afternoon, more than 30 spectators had been removed for repeated insults, threats, and tossed objects, an unprecedented tally for a Ryder Cup. Uniformed state troopers doubled their presence along player walkways and family areas, a visible sign that the situation had shifted from isolated outbursts to a full-blown crisis. For the first time, event organizers faced logistical strain and reputational risk on a scale that demanded immediate, structural action. The Ryder Cup's code of conduct was no longer a guideline, it was an emergency protocol. Number 14. Saturday at Bethpage became a case study in how quickly the Ryder Cup's energy can sour. Throughout the afternoon, microphones caught a steady barrage of profanity, chants, slurs, and shouted insults, all unfiltered and echoing across the broadcast. Commentators, caught off guard, issued on-air apologies as the language escalated beyond anything previously heard at the event. The atmosphere turned hostile, with players forced to pause, regroup, and try to block out the noise. In that soundscape, the difference between passionate support and targeted harassment blurred, setting the stage for the physical confrontations that would soon follow in the stands. Number 13. The grandstands at Bethpage became a flashpoint for something rarely seen at a Ryder Cup: fan-on-fan violence. Video clips from Saturday afternoon show shoving matches erupting near the 16th green and 18th tee, with tempers boiling over as rival supporters jostled for position and hurled insults. Police and marshals moved in quickly, forming clusters to separate the most aggressive fans and escorting entire groups out of the venue. In a sport where players and spectators are separated by just a rope, the sudden outbreak of physical fights marked a visible loss of control. Public safety, not just sportsmanship, was now at stake. Number 12. Leadership faced its own credibility crisis as PGA of America President Don Rhea became a symbol of tone-deaf response in the midst of Ryder Cup chaos. While players and fans grappled with the fallout from abusive crowd behavior, footage surfaced of Rhea rapping at a sponsor karaoke event just hours after the most contentious incidents at Bethpage. The optics were damning, a senior official appearing to celebrate while the tournament's reputation was under fire. Backlash was swift, with critics calling out the disconnect between Rhea's public persona and the seriousness of the event's problems. Rhea issued an apology, admitting his actions failed to reflect the gravity of the situation. In a week where every gesture was scrutinized, the president's misstep underscored a growing demand for accountability at the very top. Number 11. The fallout from Bethpage exploded well beyond the course. In the days after the final putt, golf's biggest voices and sports writers unleashed a torrent of condemnation. Op-eds labeled the event unacceptable, astonishing, and accused organizers of letting fan behavior cross a line. Headlines and outlets from ESPN to The Guardian demanded reform, while players took to social media with calls for tighter MC guidelines and stricter ejection rules. This wasn't just a bad weekend, it was a reputational crisis that forced the PGA and DP World Tour to promise sweeping changes before the next cup. For the first time, the Ryder Cup's future was debated in boardrooms, not just locker rooms, as the sport reckoned with how far things had spiraled. Number 10. The so-called Hatgate erupted on the 18th green at Rome in 2023, fueled by a rumor that Patrick Cantlay was refusing to wear his Team USA cap in protest over Ryder Cup pay. Sky Sports aired the claim, and within hours, social media amplified it into a full-blown narrative. Italian fans seized on the story, waving their hats in unison and jeering Cantlay with every step. The spectacle on the final hole, Cantlay draining a monster putt amid a sea of mocking gestures, turned a simple fashion choice into a flashpoint for crowd provocation. Cantlay denied the protest, but the rumor had already shaped the mood, showing just how quickly a single report can turn the gallery from spectators into participants. The ripple effects would carry straight into the car park confrontation that followed. Number 9. The parking lot at Marco Simone became the unlikely stage for one of the Ryder Cup's rawest confrontations. Minutes after a tense finish on the 18th green, Rory McIlroy erupted in anger, shouting across the courtesy car zone at members of the U.S. caddie team. His frustration boiled over, fueled by what he later called the red mist, an emotional state that left him nearly out of control. Shane Lowry, sensing the moment was spiraling, physically bundled McIlroy into a waiting car before things could escalate further. Captains from both sides worked behind the scenes to cool tempers, trading private messages and urging their teams to move on. The fallout lingered, a reminder that in the Ryder Cup, the emotional stakes don't end when the final putt drops. Sometimes, the real drama begins after the cameras turn away. Number 8 brings us to Whistling Straits in 2021, where Brooks Koepka's temper flared over a rules dispute that would echo far beyond the fairway. During Saturday foursomes, Koepka's ball landed near a drain, He argued it interfered with his swing and demanded relief under Rule 16.1, which covers abnormal course conditions. The officials inspected the lie and, finding no clear interference with stance or swing, denied his request. Koepka erupted, unleashing a stream of profanity caught live on the broadcast. The tirade drew immediate criticism from commentators and fellow pros, not just for the language, but for the disregard of the rule's nuance. Relief is only granted when interference is clear, not just inconvenient. The incident spotlighted the difference between temporary immovable obstructions and standard relief, and set a precedent for how rules ignorance can fuel disrespect on the biggest stage. Number 7. The 2018 Ryder Cup in Paris became a case study in team dysfunction going public. Just days after Team USA's crushing defeat, Patrick Reed sat down with the New York Times and aired his grievances for the world to see. Reed blamed Captain Jim Furyk for splitting up the Reed-Spieth pairing, accusing both leadership and teammates of failing him. "I was looking at Jordan like, I don't have any idea why you wouldn't want to play with me," he told the paper. The headlines didn't stop there. Rumors swirled about a heated altercation between Dustin Johnson and Brooks Koepka at a post-match party, reportedly requiring intervention from team officials. For a squad built on the idea of unity, this was a public unraveling. The fallout exposed the limits of the captain's authority and left future American teams scrambling to patch up fractured relationships before the next cup. Number 6. Hazeltine 2016 offered a rare moment of clarity on crowd control. During Saturday four balls, a spectator hurled a crude slur at Rory McIlroy, cutting through the usual banter with something that crossed an unambiguous line. Marshals reacted instantly, flagging the offender for security, who escorted the fan out within minutes. No warnings, no delays, just decisive enforcement of the code of conduct. Media outlets praised the swift response, holding it up as a textbook example of how to protect players and preserve the spirit of competition. In a landscape where enforcement often lags behind escalation, Hazeltine set a clear precedent. When the line is crossed, removal isn't optional, it's essential. Number 5. Hazeltine's practice green became the unlikely stage for a lesson in crowd management. An American spectator had been heckling Henrik Stenson and Justin Rose, loudly doubting their putting skills. Instead of escalating the tension, Rose tossed the man a $100 bill and invited him to take the putt himself. With the entire gallery watching, the fans stepped up and calmly drained it, sending the crowd into a frenzy. Laughter replaced jeers, and players and fans shared a rare moment of unity. What could have been another flashpoint turned into a highlight reel of sportsmanship, showing that sometimes humor and humility are the best answers to heckling. The $100 putt remains a reminder that not every confrontation needs to end in conflict. Number 4. Hazeltine 2016 delivered a spectacle that still defines the boundary between showmanship and interference. Patrick Reed and Rory McIlroy went toe-to-toe in singles, trading fist pumps, shush gestures, and the now iconic ear cupping, each inviting the crowd to amplify the moment. Reed's finger-to-lips response after draining a crucial putt was answered by McIlroy's own theatrical roar, neither player holding back. Yet for all the noise, no rules were broken. No one stepped in a line. No one disrupted a shot. The gallery fed off the energy, but officials saw no cause for penalty. Both players later described it as pure adrenaline, proof that high-octane needle can electrify the cup without crossing into disrespect. This was the template, passion unleashed, but always within the ropes. Coming to the top 3, Gleneagles in 2014 marked a turning point for Ryder Cup theatrics. Patrick Reed, facing a wall of Scottish jeers during his singles match against Henrik Stenson, buried a crucial putt and answered the crowd with a deliberate finger-to-lips shush. That gesture, caught by every camera, was more than a taunt. It was the birth of Reed's Captain America persona and the first shot in a new era of performative rivalry. Until then, crowd interaction at the Ryder Cup had been mostly playful, but Reed's defiance signaled something different. A willingness to embrace the villain's role, to feed off the hostility and turn it into fuel. No rules were broken, no lines technically crossed, but the tone was set. What started as a single gesture in Scotland became the blueprint for the next decade of emotional, sometimes volatile, Ryder Cup moments, laying the foundation for the culture clash that would erupt years later at Bethpage. In second place, the defining soundbite of Bethpage came not from a fan or a caddie, but from Rory McIlroy in the press room. After a week marred by ejections, fights, and threats, McIlroy's words echoed with finality. Unacceptable, abusive behavior. The phrase dominated headlines, crystallizing what players, officials, and viewers had witnessed. A Ryder Cup where the line between rivalry and outright hostility was obliterated. The organizers issued a rare joint apology, pledging immediate review of crowd management and MC protocols. Within hours, a task force was announced to rewrite the event's code of conduct, with first tee moderation and expedited ejection procedures at the top of the agenda. McIlroy's condemnation forced the industry to admit a crisis, setting off a policy debate that would reshape future cups. In a single press conference, the Ryder Cup's culture of passionate fandom was put on trial, demanding answers from those in charge. And finally, in first place, the 18th green at Marco Simone became the crucible for a new Ryder Cup era. As Patrick Cantlay's putt dropped, Joe LaCava, his caddy, stepped into Rory McIlroy's line, waving his cap and refusing to move as McIlroy tried to read his own must-make putt. The confrontation was immediate, with words exchanged and tension radiating across both teams. Multi-angle footage captured LaCava lingering, a gesture that European captain Luke Donald later called overstepping the mark. No rule was technically broken, but the unwritten code was shattered. Caddies are expected to remain invisible, never interfering with opponents' focus or space. In the aftermath, LaCava's celebration became a reference point in every future etiquette briefing, cited by both captains and organizers as the moment that reframed what respect means on golf's biggest stage. This single act didn't just spark a car park showdown, it defined the boundaries for every Ryder Cup that followed. From Collin Morikawa's seemingly innocuous absolute chaos comment to Joe LaCava's infamous 18th green confrontation, the 20 most disrespectful moments at the Ryder Cup reveal how quickly competitive fire can turn toxic. Across every entry, the line between passion and outright hostility is tested. Whether it's a liquid thrown at a player's family, a comedian turned MC fueling vulgar chants, or physical altercations erupting in the grandstands. The pattern is clear. What began as theatrical showmanship and cheeky gestures in the 2010s has escalated into organizational failures, security crises, and moments that forced historic apologies. The top-ranked moments didn't just break etiquette. They redefined the boundaries of acceptable conduct, prompting industry-wide calls for reform. Ultimately, this list proves that when rivalry tips into abuse, the spirit of the Ryder Cup and the safety of everyone involved are put at risk. As the tournament evolves, these incidents stand as a stark reminder. True sportsmanship demands both passion and respect.